Here's a peek at what guests had to say after the show.
We're here back on the internet. Amy, does America still have the triple package qualities it needs to be successful?
I actually think it does. I think it does. We've always had a sense of exceptionality. What we lost, I think, exactly.
Say the least.
But what we always also had until the former Soviet Union fell is a dash of insecurity. We were the underdog. We were always trying to prove ourselves that our system of democracy and equality were better than the monarchs. And I think that's actually what we lost in the last 20 or 30 years. So I think
Really?
that I do. I think this is related to that commercial. I think it's a new sense that, you know, we had better get our act together. We need to prove ourselves and do better. So I'm an optimist.
Okay. Seth, what has changed in our knowledge of the cosmos since the original show premiered? Oh, that's interesting.
Wow.
Have we learned anything since Carl Sagan? Was that 1980?
This is a question for Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
I feel like the first exoplanets were discovered in the mid-90s.
Didn't they throw Pluto out at one point?
They threw Pluto, yes.
Yeah.
Neil threw Pluto out. But I think, unless I'm...
That was tough.
He threw, yes.
But Pluto was drunk.
It has been...
Pluto...
No, I think in the mid-90s we discovered the first planets outside our solar system that we were able to actually detect. So I think that's a significant development that's taken place since the first show aired.
Is he going to say billions and billions of stars? Like,
Neil?
Yeah, he's got at some point. You know what I loved at the end when he shed? I never realized that when he was a 17-year-old kid, he went up to Ithaca.
Yeah.
And there is a sort of a personal passing of that legacy between him and Carl Sagan.
He's the perfect guy to do this job.
Yeah.
For that reason, among others.
Okay. Alan Weitzman, given that Americans overwhelmingly think of consumption as our main problem and not overpopulation, how do you think we can activate a shift in cultural norms to address this problem?
You know, if I knew the answer to that one, I would have written a book about consumption. As someone I interviewed for this...
It's such an erudite way of saying "fuck you."
Someone I interviewed for the book pointed out that there's no condom for consumption.
Right.
Yeah, there just isn't.
Well, that's a great old Stephen Foster song.
Well, yeah, we're all addicted to stuff like energy, so...
There's no consumption.
Yeah. But what we can do is control the number of consumers.
We made it up and we both knew how it went. How did that work out? Maybe we are meant to be together. I don't know. Yeah, let's get this party going. Okay. Who is your favorite U.S. politician from a party you don't usually associate with? Well, we were talking about Rand Paul. I mean, he's like his father. I love half of him.
You know, I don't really have a favorite politician. I kind of...
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, maybe Obama. I mean, maybe
Obama has a way of, like, he loses you, and then he does something like, I saw him a couple of weeks ago talking to those black kids at the White House, and he was like so amazingly honest when he said that thing about, you know, when I was young, I got high. Oh, I was fucking blitzed. And it was just so raw and real, and he's like Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. He pulls me back in.
I just think he's a much greater president than the polls currently suggest.
History will say that.
I really do.
Yeah, because first of all, he stopped the Depression. You know, I mean,
we can now say. We can now actually have a comparative rating of that. We can look at every other country that went through the same thing,
right,
and see where we are and where they are, and we are currently the best. We even beat Germany out of this. Yeah. And that was not a given when he
Can
came
you imagine
into
what he would have been able to do if he had like 1 degree of cooperation?
Well, that's. Yeah.
But
what's amazing to me is what he's done without it. I mean, he's grinding out. He's grinding out. With brutal opposition, he's grinding out the possibility of universal health care in this country, which is an epochal event in American social policy. He's also grinding out a saner post-imperial foreign policy that I think, basically, he will have to be part of this country's DNA from now on. He's presided over a civil rights revolution with gay rights in a way that also no one quite saw happening.
Yeah, he's not exactly getting rid of the American empire. I don't know where you're getting that from. I mean,
no, he's not engaged. He's a pragmatist, But no, he got us out of Afghanistan. He's getting us out of Iraq. The way he's handling these other
Well,
places.
first he got us more into Afghanistan.
Yeah, in order to get out. But, you know, he's a realist. And,
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
you had to inoculate
Yeah.
yourself against being told you're weak.
That's right. And it didn't even work. But you can only
It didn't,
imagine.
but
Right.
great to prove to John McCain the surge
Right.
never fucking worked. Didn't work in Afghanistan. It's a big bullshit to get us out of there with
By the way,
saving face.
I saw in the paper today that in Iraq, the Shiites there are pushing through a bill in their parliament to legalize child marriage as young as 9. So isn't that great? Mission accomplished. That we took over Iraq and put the Shiites in charge so they could legalize marriage to a 9-year-old.
Meanwhile, the murder rate, the sectarian murders
Yeah.
are getting back to the state they were before we threw all those troops at it.
Okay. Seth, do you think now that Cosmos has been updated and relaunched that it will create a renewed interest in science and thus further the debate between science versus faith?
You know, when Carl Sagan was alive, he would meet with religious leaders and say, look, we both recognize that climate change is a problem. Me for scientific reasons, you because God's creation is getting fucked with. So let's both work together to stop this.
Look, let's look at the Noah story. You dissected it beautifully. But it's also really one of the most important...
Beautifully?
No, it's one of the most important scientific stories in the Bible. It's basically God telling humans, all right, I'm going to give you another chance, but to save yourselves, you also have to save all the animals, because we can't have a world without them. This is an argument for biodiversity.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
language
you.
that some people get.
What you've been saying is something Bill doesn't want to believe.
Except 2.
Oh, come on.
It's
Bill.
like, wait, we're always
metaphor.
seeing what's
It's
going on
only-
in the boat where he saved the 2 cute kitty cats. Let's pan over outside the boat where they're all drowning.
Hey, the story
Bill, do
was
not-
originally a metaphor.
What kind of God kills babies?
Bill, it's like watching Tom and Jerry and saying, how could that happen? Look, it's a story, it's an allegory, it's a metaphor that it's a repository
that
of a deep human
60% of
wisdom.
Americans
Look,
believe is true.
That is just because some people are stupid enough to take an empirical attitude towards allegorical
You're a
things.
fellow traveler with them.
Can't you see?
I don't defend taking the Bible literally. I spend a large part of my life campaigning against that.
Can you see religion as a bookmark? There's nothing right now that can satisfy some of these larger questions. We're a lot closer than we were
Yes, they
100
can.
years ago, but it can be viewed as a bookmark until we figure out what the actual
I don't
answer
think of
is.
Jesus as a bookmark. I think of it as the beginning of a whole new era of human consciousness.
But morality did not start with Jesus. Morality did not begin
No,
with
but it
religion.
became radically transformed by Jesus.
It was canonized by religion, but it
of Jesus
predates
told
religion.
by St. Paul 150 years later.
Yeah. So?
More or less fictional.
Yes.
No.
More or less
What do
fictional.
you mean more or less fictional?
Told by people who didn't know anything about him.
Right. Well, Paul wrote close to Jesus. Jesus died in 33. Paul wrote in the 50s. The Gospels were written between 70 and
Look, they
110.
were oral histories. They were oral
Right.
histories passed along
But
by
St.
people.
Paul knew-
Chinese whispers, I know.
St.
But
Paul
when you
knew
read
nothing
them,
about Jesus. How come the guy who lived closest to Jesus knew nothing about him, and the guy who's lived 40 years later knew more about him? St. Paul didn't even know
Because
that he lived on earth. He
because-
thought he only lived in the heavenly realm.
because that's completely not true.
That's absolutely true.
Why is it so taboo
St. Paul didn't
to
believe
say?
Jesus existed as a human being?
Correct.
Why is it so taboo to say I don't know?
Look it up, man. Use the Google. We gotta go. Thank you.
Real Time with Bill Maher. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com or on Twitter.